Hello, hello, hello again today. This is the 21st episode of the Mental Threads podcast. I'm your host, Toasty. Today's date is September 24th. My guest here is very special. Her name is Love Watley, if you'd like to say.
Hello, how is everyone? Peace and love.
Yes, peace and love indeed. Now, from my understanding, Love Watley, you just got a degree in social work, correct?
I did. I just got my Master of Social Work. Yes, here at Central.
Hold up, dang, your master's? Oh, okay, I thought it was bachelor's. Oh my gosh, that is crazy. So you're just kind of dedicated to the whole social working thing and everything?
I am. I love social work, and social work actually led me into what I'm doing now, which is confidence coaching.
Okay, confidence coaching. So if you were to go into detail, what is confidence coaching like in general and just to you as, yeah, what is confidence coaching?
So to me, confidence coaching is really helping people find their worth, their value, but I'm finding their value in the things that they value, right? So it's not about like what I perceive as valuable or what even society thinks is valuable. It's more so about that person. So everything is very person centered. And so just helping them find their value in that. You know, if you say you value one thing and you don't feel like you're good in it or you're not performing up to your best ability, whatever category that may be, let me help you get there.
Okay, so it's like basically like you're basically just working for people to get their groove back in a sense like that, get their confidence back or whatever. So like just let me just think like maybe hypothetically. Okay, let's just say like there's a person, okay? A person that's like, I don't know, maybe I'm thinking back to the SpongeBob episode, like when dude just didn't know how to make Krabby Patties because what's his name? Bubble Bass kept messing with him with the pickle situation, so he kind of lost his confidence. So that whole episode was dedicated to him just learning to like do a Krabby Patty, but it was just simple type stuff. It was all on his head. You basically just unravel people's like sense of just insecurities, whether if it's connected to trauma or whatever, and you just kind of help them just bypass it.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you said trauma because that's what social work is about. You know, we really help people flesh out their trauma. And I wanted to be a licensed clinical social worker because I like doing therapy as well. So in confidence coaching, I do implement some therapeutic interventions, do some strength-based exercises so people can see, well, what am I good at? You know, anybody can come to me and talk about what they feel like they lack in, or like you said, how other people perceive it. So I remember that episode, and I remember that Big Mean Fish kept hiding the pickles under his tongue. So it wasn't that SpongeBob wasn't doing what he was supposed to do or was not excellent at what he did, but that person refused to recognize it. And so that's another major part of what I do is helping people understand that it's not about anyone else. You know, how you perceive yourself matters more than anything. And that is what self-confidence is, your self-perception.
Okay, well, that's cool. Well, let's just connect it to real life because, I have a deep interest in music and rap as a whole. I've been writing since I was like 13, on again, off again, but sadly, it kind of led to me intermingling with people who weren't really good for me and stuff of that nature. So it led to a whole lot of, I don't want to say teasing, let's just say what it is. Like, kind of, I don't even like to use the term bullying in a sense because that's like, I guess it's just being put in that position, being considered like a victim is like something I really don't like putting myself in. But yeah, it just led to a whole lot of nonsense I had to deal with it to the point where it's just like I don't want to say I fell out of love with it in a sense because I'll always have a love for music and rap as a whole, but it just stopped becoming very practical for me and everything. So it's like, writing every day, something like this, it could be something dumb and everything, just getting it out of my system to write. Now it feels like a chore and everything, which is one of the reasons what took my whole mixtape, Ego Trip. Yeah, Ego Trip. I think you pretty much know about it. I think I sent it to you. Like just 12 songs on that, although I'm very, very happy to actually get it done and everything. There's always still a sense of emptiness. Like, did I apply myself as much as I could? Did I have fun? Like, what was it? And it's just like, so it's like, in a sense, it's like, what if you, just considering like my case, just on which I've told you just now and everything, what are some things that maybe some habits I need to probably like bring into like the forefront to probably help overcome a lot of these barriers, like writing, creativity, writer's block, and stuff of that nature. Like, what's your stance on stuff like that?
So I'm going to go with two things. And the first one is going to be the normal cliche option, which is to figure out what your why is. really revisit that. Like, why did you start writing in the first place? What were some of your inspirations? Were you going through a tough time at the moment and it was an outlet for you? So maybe when you are mentally in a good space, you do have writer's block because that's not when you feel most inspired to write, right? So focus on that why. And then the second thing would be to just relax. I find that sometimes when we're so focused on producing, like we're not really in our creative space. So sometimes you have to just relax. I can say for myself, like when it comes to my videos, I just feel inspired, and if I have time, I'll record one. Or, first thing in the morning, I'm waking up, I have things on my mind, and I'm like, let me talk to the ladies about something, So it can be like a matter of convenience, but I also know if I woke up and I wasn't in a good space, I wouldn't be able to produce anything creative because I'm thinking about whatever other things I have going on. So find your why, and then secondly, just examine yourself and make sure you're in a good, clear headspace.
Okay, yeah, that seems to pretty much connect a whole lot for real. Because I feel like, me falling into a negative headspace, because it's like, there's always like that voice in the back of your head, from like other people, oh, you can't rap, or oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. And then it's just like, I guess in a sense you kind of feel a little bit, I don't want to say defeated, but you kind of feel like, I don't know, like you're stuck in a sense. It's just like, like in a sense, it's still a part of you that feels like, you start to find like other excuses as to why you can't go forward. Like, oh, I ain't even got a bunch of money for studio time, and I need to focus on school. This is probably getting in the way of you start making these imaginary barriers when it's really just a hobby and everything. I feel like part of me kind of knows that in a sense, but it's just like I feel like it's really just making it all practical. Basically, I feel like that feels like the obstacle and so on and so forth. So it's like if you were to like give advice to anybody else out there that really wants to do something, but they're kind of holding themselves back, I feel like you pretty much answered this. But if there's anything else, maybe you want to like probably alliterate or probably add on to it, like what would you say exactly?
Okay, well, I feel like every industry is different, but I think one of the most important things to do is study your craft. Because a lot of times when I hear that people don't continue to do something or they feel like they get stuck, it's because they hit a barrier. So like you mentioned, like, oh, maybe I don't have enough money for studio time, but like even now we're recording on a recording device, that you can carry in your pocket. So it's like people will find all kinds of reasons why they can't. So I would encourage people to find reasons that they can. Like when I look at problems, I try not to be like, oh, well, this is impossible because of this. It's more like, how can I make this happen? Like, what can I do to make this possible for myself? And I will explore all the possibilities where it will work instead of looking at reasons why it won't. And that's really what makes the difference between people who are successful in anything. You have to be relentless towards whatever you're going towards.
Okay, yes, I understand that fully. I understand your audience is mostly female, correct?
Mostly women, yes.
Okay. And would you like strive to get more male audiences, or it's just you're just gonna focus mostly on the females?
Well, that's a good question. To be honest, I want to work with more men, specifically on things like, learning how to date, how to interact with women. I feel like there's so many people who don't get those lessons, and they make women uncomfortable, and it's unintentional. It's not that the guy isn't nice. It's not that he's not smart or even that he's not a great catch. He just doesn't have those skills yet, and I think those do, people say, oh, it comes over time, but not necessarily. It really comes with practice, being able to cultivate that. And so I find a lot of young men in a space where they feel like other men are at more of an advantage than they are, when really it's like, no, he just talks more, he networks more, he purposely puts himself in social situations, even though he may be nervous as well. So, yes, to answer your question, I would like to cater to more men. I guess I'm just still trying to figure out, like, in what capacity.
Okay. I mean, it seems like you have a very big idea as to what capacity, because I know like even in this age, social media age and everything, I feel like for us to really connect with our female counterparts is kind of like, I wouldn't say it's so much as say like it's more of like a maze or anything like that, but it's like I feel like there's a huge lack of just, I don't want to say authenticity, but like and any sense of like of an organic type of connection, like because it's like you always look on Instagram, right now I got like 6,000 followers and I'm following like 6,000 people. A lot of those accounts are bots anyway, but it's like a lot of people when you think about just like you're scrolling through the DMs and people, I feel like you notice that there's not really so much of a connection. Everybody kind of feels like an option, and that's what I feel like is really messing us up in our generation now. No one's so much focused on the relationship aspect and the what connects us all as people, but so far like the options, like what does this person have, what car do they drive, how much money they make and everything compared to this person, like what's his personality like, oh like okay, like this person's a little bit more funny, this one's a little bit like more like he's quiet, so it's like he doesn't over talk too much, this person's like maybe just has his stuff together and everything. So we more or less kind of focus on the attributes people have and match them up to the next person instead of looking inward and see like who works best for me as an individual in my space. And I feel like that's what it is for like our generation. Well, how would you feel about this? How would you weigh in this?
No, I mean, to be honest, I totally agree. And believe it or not, that's actually a realization I came to recently, that it's not that we really have access to these individuals. It's like we seemingly do, but it's like through the phone, they're not in close proximity. These people could be in a neighboring city, in another state. So it gives you the illusion that you have a lot of options when in reality you have those people who are around you. So it's like, well, what's wrong with the guy next door? How come you can't date this individual who you say, well, I want somebody smart, I want someone ambitious, he's doing things with his life, he has a job, he is responsible. So what's wrong with dating him instead of being like, oh, well, I kind of want a guy that has this, this, and this. And this is why I like just this space that we're in now where people are really speaking more about relationships and just relations amongst men and women, because to be honest, I honestly feel like people assume that it's only the Black community that experiences this, but it's tons of other groups. The difference is that when you see things on TV, they mentally want to destroy Black people and keep us limited. So obviously those images and things that they promote aren't going to be in the most positive light. But I mean, I know plenty of Black families that are married, people that come from a two-parent household. Like my parents are married. Both sets of their parents were married, my dad and my mom. There's married people all through the family. Like that's a normal thing. But to other people, it's like, oh no, this isn't. And you know what? I'm about to go off on another tangent. That brings me to the research. And one of the reasons why I love social work so much is because they do have both research and practicum. We don't just help people, but we use what we call evidence-based practices. So I like that because I feel like it really shows you what's what. And what I mean by that is I've looked at a few articles, and it wasn't until I came across one article about Black households. I think it said like over 70% of Black households were single parent homes. And when you look at their definition, because again, every study does have like a key. So it tells you what they mean by those terms. So when you look at different studies, those terms can mean different things across studies, depending on what person's writing it, what institution it's coming from, et cetera, right? So I'm looking at this article, and it says that single parent was speaking to their marital status. It wasn't about whether or not both parents were together or if that man was in his child's life, So it's like when you see single parent, what do you think?
I mean, when I say single parent, I feel like now it's becoming more and more the norm. Like, I feel like maybe that's just my family, or whatever, but because it's just like, I mean, I know my sister just got married like not too long ago. She had a son and everything right around like about 10, maybe 12, 13 years ago and everything. That's my nephew
But when
and
you
everything, yeah.
envision like the a single parent, what pops in your head?
Well, when I envision the single parent, it's just like I don't really make assumptions and everything because it's like, I don't want to be the type of person. Oh, why are they a single parent? Like, what's up with them? Because everybody has their own stories. Like maybe, what single parent are we saying? Like, well, one father is a single parent taking care of kids, or just the woman taking care of the kids? Like,
So when most people think about single parents, they think of a woman being by herself. And so that's what the study was it seems like it was alluding to at first glance. So let's say someone came across the study and they just found that stat. They would pull it out, which I'm glad that you don't, adhere to those stereotypes. But when most people see it, they would say, okay, well, it's this woman and she's by herself with this baby and he probably left her and da 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 da. People just fill in the gaps in their head, which is normal. We're human. So a lot of times we fill in those things just so we can understand our world. And so, but that's not what that means. Literally, they're just not married. They could be together for 10, 20, 30 years, or the parents can be like co-parenting. The father doesn't necessarily live there, but that doesn't mean that she is completely alone. And single parent has such a stigma, especially for men, where it's like, oh, he's not involved. But that's not what the study was saying. Single just means unmarried. So that's what I was getting at with that. Wasn't trying to like trip you up or anything. But I feel like the vast majority of people, when they think of single parent, it's like, oh, it's a mom, she has children, she's alone. And a lot of times, single parent home means that they're unmarried. And that is misleading.
yeah, man, it's really, I don't want to say it's sad because even me and Alejandro, I think, spoke about it in another episode, how most black folk were married around the 60s and everything like that. I feel like even though like we're still going through a hard time with Jim Crow or segregation, like we were more together as a people. And that's one thing I'm kind of noticing. Like I know nowadays it's just like with the competition, how things are nowadays, it's all about how many women you get, how much money you got. And it's like, everyone's trying to get this best out of life. Well, so-called best out of life without no regulation of any, it all comes down to that organic type of, what's organically good for life really. Because you could have all those things, all the riches, all the woman, all the whatever in the world, you would not really 100% be happy and everything. We're, like when it comes to like the brain, we got dopamine, we got serotonin, and what's that third thing? I think there's a third chemical. What's the third chemical in your brain that regulates mood and everything?
Okay, you said dopamine.
Yeah, and serotonin.
And serotonin.
That's the first one. There's another one, isn't there? Like,
yeah, there is.
I'm trying to figure out what that was. I'll probably need to look it up. But anyway, like, see, with dopamine, it's like dopamine is like the thing that kind of like makes you happy, right? Like reward system and everything. But serotonin is like, that's real happiness, like just being content. Someone poor could have a whole lot of serotonin. It's like, hey, I might not have everything, but I have everything I need. I feel like that's what sucks about our generation. We're not very content. It's always on to the next thing. So it's hard for us to really just stay stable and just be happy with what we got and so on. And it's just like, I feel like that's really going to wreak havoc with marriage going forward.
Oh, Lord.
Like, really, because it's just like, even like for my case, I would imagine like what it would be like to get married and everything. And on one hand, like you have your blueprint of like what your perfect partner would be. And it's just like, I feel like that's hella selfish at the same time, because it's just like, yeah, it's like, oh, I want her to be like this. I want her to be like this. I want to be like, I want him to be like this. He should be like this tall or, she should be like this funny, and it's just like, but you need to look at yourself. You got to understand it's just like, what do you really bring to the table really as an individual? I know a lot of men like to ask that dumb question. It's like, what does she bring to the table? But you got to ask yourself, like, dude, you're the man at the same time. Like, it's balanced type stuff. It's both of y'all. Like, what do y'all both bring to the table as a whole? Do you know about your flaws? Do you get angry very quickly? Like, are you stable mentally and emotionally?
No,
it's like
mentally stable, that's a big one. But, okay, this is what I was going to say, because while you're saying this, I'm like, that makes a lot of sense, wanting the next best thing. But when you think about how we're conditioned, all the new iPhones, the new J's, like things just get old fast. And I don't honestly believe that it's always about like, what do you bring to the table? I think that people have to understand themselves as individuals first. Because even with confidence coaching, a lot of women come to me for relationships first, right? So they come to me about their relationship, and that's how confidence coaching came about, because really it's more of an internal thing. Like, it's not really about you and that individual. And the other thing I think is messing us up is all of this gender stuff. Like, people, oh, I don't conform to gender roles. And it's like, well, to be honest, your grandparents stayed together that long because there were gender roles. You know, like, everybody had their place. This man provided, you know, the women, some of them did work, but they did what was best for their family. If it was best for the woman to stay at home and just be a stay-at-home mother, she did that. If she had to work because the husband couldn't support the entire family or didn't aspire to, you know, then that's what she did. So it's really about what works for you. And that's why I go back to that woman and her individual goals, because I feel like people focus so much on what I say, right? Like, well, if I say this, love isn't going to approve, you know, but it's like, no, what do you want? If you genuinely want a man who doesn't mind you working and he actually wants you to work or even expects for you to work, then that's what works for your family. Don't choose a guy, a potential partner, based off of what I think. That's just what I want for myself. And so when people look at it from that perspective, as in like, what are the needs of the family? What are our goals? You know, if this man works with his single job and he is paying all of the bills, but then you all are like, oh, we want to own a restaurant in 5 years. Should you be working so you can save money so you can own the restaurant? You get what I'm saying? So, like, things of that nature, it's really about the goals. And I think a lot of people in our generation, they don't even have goals for real. So they don't look at what they're working towards. They're just looking at, what can I get? What's the next best thing that's going to excite me, make me horny? You know, you get what I'm saying? Look good on my arm. Like, that's what they're focused on. It's really not about family and about building community.
You know, I feel that for real. I know you brought up like how like families back then were a little bit more functional back then when it came with stuff like that. Like, okay, like woman had a woman's role, man's had man's role, which is like, yeah, I feel that a whole lot. But it's like at the same token, with every pro, there's always still a con. At the same, I feel like this is what drove women to like not want to mess with that. Because a lot of our like grandmothers and stuff at that time, I feel like, you know, a lot of them were kind of slided to the side. Like, you know, because you had your grandfather and there was probably Rolling Stones, or you're probably starting families or whatever, and the one was just staying at home. So it's like, I feel like at the same time, I feel like a lot of women just don't like that power just taken from them or taken advantage of them. And that's why it's like, I feel like, you know, it's always good to like, you know, to emphasize like with black women especially, because y'all had to go through a lot of nonsense along with us too. You know, we've all witnessed, you know, so much atrocities in this country. And I feel like that trauma just kind of passed down to us in DNA fashion. I know, like, I'm Liberian. My parents are straight out of Africa. At the same time, I'm not saying like I ain't got it either, but it's like you see it in society all the time, and it kind of bleeds into it a lot. And it's just like, you know, I feel like, you know, like we even spoke about it like with Alejandra in another episode. It's just like, you know, black masculinity, although it's a part of it, it's also very precious to kind of keep, to preserve and to build upon. You know, black femininity, you know, I feel like it's also something that we really, really need to protect moving forward too. And it's just like, I don't really mind if like, you know, like having like a wife that's just like, you know, like that's, you know, I'd rather just have her like on my level, like, you know, we're at the same level, like we're equals. I don't want to be like, oh, like, hey, you know, it's just like, you know, you do this, you know, stay in your place, stuff like I'm just, nah. It's like if there's something that's going wrong, you know, you got to let me know. If you're not feeling something or you're not feel comfortable with something, you don't like something, you got to be communicative. And that's why I feel like it kind of messed up with my family life too. There's a huge lack of communication. If you're not feeling some type of way or there's something that just bothers you, you have to communicate on it. You know, and I feel like that's what we need to go back as a people. We need to start respecting each other, man and woman, like, you know, the femininity in one woman and the masculinity in the man, and just build each other off of that. So it's just like, it's really sad that we see like in this community, because I feel like, you know, there's just a lack of respect on both ends. And I feel like the more we can just really just calm down to really have a conversation, like how me and you are talking right now, to really speak on like what's really like the problem, I feel like we're never gonna have progress moving forward. And I feel like, it's just a matter of just what we're willing to do. So yeah.
Absolutely. And with that being said, I think that is really good to even acknowledge what you're saying about, being able to communicate what those needs are. Like, what if she wanted to be a stay at home mother? I think before it was more so about, like, okay, this is a woman's place, this is a man's place, but it doesn't have to be. I guess it's just the way people are perceiving it, right? Because if you have a role, that is your place. You get what I'm saying? So it doesn't matter who has what role as long as it works for you, but people do need a place. And to be honest, it's showing up in men's mental health, not just black men, but men across the board. Over 78% of suicides are committed by men. That's over 3 out of 4. And so if that's the case, why is it? And most of the research is pointing to the fact that men don't feel needed anymore. Women need security, right? So that is financial security, physical security. If she can work, she can cover her finances. And then because of the system that we live in that's supposed to be civilized, quote unquote, she has the police. She has the fire department, etc. And I remember I was listening to a speaker not too long ago, and they were like, well, when a woman calls the police because of a situation, let's say somebody, intruded in her home, or, somebody's knocking on her door at all hours of the night. When she calls the police, she's expecting a man to show up. If you call the fire department because there's a fire, you're not expecting to see a woman. You're expecting a man to show up. So it's like we're still getting what we need. It's just looking different now because the world is evolving. And so what I try to get people to understand is that just because we are evolving as a humanity, as society, that doesn't mean that we don't need each other for the same things. And I feel like the reason why there's so much disrespect is because women don't see value in men, and vice versa. A lot of men don't see value in women anymore because we're not doing what we're supposed to do. So I feel like if it's not broken, don't fix it. We should go back to the way it was before, and that's the way I live my life. And the other thing I would say with that is a lot of times people don't really know any better because of the way they grew up. So I know, like, most men that you hear arguing about, oh, a woman should work and she should do that, they got that from their mothers who were single parents, raising 4 or 5 kids by herself, unmarried, or she was married, but her husband didn't do anything, maybe didn't have a job or whatever, so that's his norm. People can only speak from their perceptions. I can speak about marriage, and I value marriage because that's what was instilled in me. You get what I'm saying? So I'm not saying what's right or what's wrong. I'm just saying when you look at people who aren't married, who don't believe in gender roles, who feel like, oh, well, equal means we have to do the same thing for each other, those relationships don't last. Those families don't thrive. Those people don't get married. And it's because nobody has a place. Like, people are afraid to say, this is what I need from you. Like, and that's very simple. Just look at the individual strengths. I know for myself, I get tired. I'm super emotional. I don't want to work to have to support an entire family. I would want my man to do that. I know my strengths. You get what I'm saying? And in turn, I would have to be with someone who's okay with that, because men who are not okay with that, they're going to add an extra layer of stress. That's when you have men like, oh, well, you don't do anything anyway, so why don't you do? And it's like, no, she does do things. She is caring for her children, rearing them, taking care of the house, cooking the meals. Like, that's a job, and it's a lot. And if anyone up here listening has ever lived by yourself, think about when you have a full-time job and then you still got to do your laundry and cook for yourself and then wash the dishes and clean the house. Like, that is time consuming. So that in itself tells you it really is a job. It just looks different than what we're accustomed to.
Oh, yeah, no, I feel that. I feel that a whole lot, man. And just like, at least like I do like what's that word? I appreciate the transparency and looking at words like, oh yeah, yeah, I don't when I have to be working and do all that. So yeah, man, I feel that. I feel that a lot. Dang, in my case, I don't know. My ideal partner, I can't really break it down like entirely and everything, because I'm still kind of like finding myself as an individual too. Like, this is my last semester, and then I'm still trying to consider trying to go to graduate school, Howard University. That's the plan. Hopefully, if things go the way I prefer them to go and everything. But it's just like, for instance, like I want to be the type to be like so independent and everything. So where it's just like, whether like a woman's in my life or not, like I'm gonna be okay. I feel like you got to take care of yourself before taking care of others. I know you mentioned about like people, like situations where the man wasn't doing anything or didn't have a job and the woman doing stuff. It's a very bad situation. And like it couldn't be me, man. Ain't no way no woman that's not my mother or nothing that's taking care of me, because that's wrong.
Right.
But I feel like that's I don't want to say it's becoming the norm nowadays, but you do see situations where men are very comfortable not really bringing anything to the woman's life. And it's just like, we really have to ask ourselves once again, it's not about what she brings to the table. What do you bring to the table and everything? That's like such a cliche type of question to ask and everything, because it's like, who are you as an individual, really? What have you done?
And really, to be honest, a woman is always going to add value. I mean, even the men who don't see value in women as a whole, they see value in them sexually. So when I see a lot of men talk on forums and people are like, oh, well, what is the woman going to bring to the table? And they're like, well, sex, duh. Like, that's what we want. I can take care of myself. I can take care of my wife. I can take care of my family. And I want my wife to have sex with me. Women are always going to bring and that's the bare minimum thing that a woman can do. Really. I mean, because I think giving of yourself, that's really major, especially since we can conceive children. But you get what I'm saying. That's outside of having any formal education. That's outside of taking care of a house, And really, a lot of the times, like especially if the men were very wealthy, the woman wouldn't have to lift a finger. If she wasn't cooking and cleaning and all of that stuff, she didn't have to do domestic things because those were already paid for. They had maid servants, so they literally only needed their wife for sex, and some of them didn't even need that. They needed their wife for legacy so they can birth children. Even when you look at like kings, ancient times, they had what they called concubines, and those concubines, their job was to sexually pleasure the king. So he didn't even need his wife for that. Like, women are literally about legacy, and that's why when people say that, like, as a woman, you're the prize, I believe that wholeheartedly. Not that I don't value men. I think men are important and we need them for sure, like 1,000%. I just don't want people to start focusing so much on the fact that, oh, women are liberated. They can do this now. They can do that now. Because even when you look at the history of women working, it started because of men going to the war and not coming back. Like men were going to the war. There were so many of them out of the states that they needed people to work. Factories had to keep going. So women were literally upholding the U.S. economy while these wars were going on. They were stepping into place. Then when a lot of those men came back, a lot of those women had to step down. But what about the women who they had to provide for themselves because their husband didn't come back? Or he lost a limb. Ableism was a real big thing back then. Nowadays, they have so many different interventions and supports for people and things against discrimination. But back in the day, if your leg was blown off, your arm was blown off, you were considered disabled. You may have been on some type of disability assistance, but they didn't want to help men. A lot of these programs are focused on women, infants, and children, which is what WIC stands for. Okay. Started by the Black Panther Party. So I feel like...
Shout out Black Panthers.
Definitely. So I feel like once you look at like the history, people will understand it better. If a woman has to work, if she's forced to work because of her circumstances, she should get paid the same amount that a man would get paid because she's the breadwinner. It's about who's head of household. And so I feel like... people just really, they talk a lot, but they don't know what they're talking about. Like, they just are like, oh, yeah, women can do this now, women can do that. Oh, y'all wanted equal rights. And it's like, you really think those women were begging to get into the workforce just because. They did that because it was needed. Like, how else am I going to feed myself? There's only but so much government assistance in the world. And on top of that, that government assistance is not only getting cut, but like I'm talking year by year, including how they make cuts to education. Not only is that getting cut, but it's also heavily focused on the ethnic majorities, not minorities. When you look at the statistics for like food stamps and housing,
Yeah, it's
in
mostly
terms of
white
Section
people.
8,
Yeah.
white people, right? Black people aren't really getting those resources. So, and that's another thing. A lot of the problems that black people talk about, and the vast majority of us aren't even going through that. And that just lets you know how psychologically embedded these things are. Like, they promote poor images of white people. They're never going to promote poor images of, well, poor images
I
of
know.
black people.
Yeah.
They're never going to promote poor images of white people. They don't do that.
Yeah, and it's always I always found it kind of weird because it's just like because Barack Obama was making a whole lot of these programs and it was mostly white folk that was like benefiting from them, you know, because it's like a lot of us have to work and everything. Like, you know, it's just like you can't just be a broke person and think you can just go party at the club all the time.
Absolutely.
And you know, it's just that's just not ideal for us as people. We're trying to find any way to get it, whether if it's legally or illegally. I mean, but it's like, you see me, I'm getting my education and everything. I'm going to shoot for my master's because you need to elevate more if you really want to survive in this world now.
Right.
It's not just go to high school, start a business, and just that's it. Like, we're long removed from those times. Everything is complicated now. Sometimes people don't need a degree to even make millions of dollars, but it's more complicated to how you get it at the same time. It's not just, oh, just go and try. Like, you have to really step out of yourself to really make things happen now. And it's just like, you know, I feel like, well, the difference from like a lot of our like, you know, white counterparts and everything, and this is just from assumption. I don't want to say like I didn't live a day in the life of being like a white person or whatever. It's just like, because it's just like there's just a majority, you know. It's just like, you know, like I feel like it's not really like, I don't want to say it's not expected for them to like be successful, but it's like they can kind of just go in however, whenever, you know, however, whatever circle they want to go. You either want to be a redneck or you want to be like hunting a whole lot or you want to do. I feel like there's more leg room, you know what I'm saying? And so it's just like there's less pressure. Whereas like for us, you know, as black men and everything, we're always expected to be like, you know, like the super strong, you know, so like the pinnacle of like, you know, humanity in a sense. Like, you know, you got to be everything. You know, you can't just be like whatever. The moment there's like some kind of flaw or whatever, you know, we're constantly trying to work on it as best as we can. And if we don't, it becomes a little bit of form of like, I don't want to say toxicity or whatever, but it could be considered toxicity if you don't, you know. If you ain't got a job and everything, but you're in school and everything, so it's hard to kind of work those things together and be like, oh yeah, why don't you got a job? Or if like, you know, you got a job but you're not in school, it's like, oh, why don't you just go to school so you can get a better job? You know, it's like, it's a lot. There's always something that you have to like work or some kind of barrier you have to like blast through. And it's like, you know, I guess for white people, I know the suicide rate is like a little bit more prevalent for like white folk. I don't want to say I don't know why. I'm just saying I be stressed out too and everything, but it's just like I'm always trying to work. I just have too many people to take care of, so it's just like it's different. But it's just stuff like that, and it's just like, you know, like from where I see it, it's just how what do you feel like, you know, in terms of like the image of black men, like how do we change the image where it's like, you know, maybe it's okay to have a little flaw here and there as long as you're working on it. Like if it was up to you to really change the image of how black men are kind of portrayed and put out there, like how would you change it in a sense for our benefit as people?
So if I was in charge of the media, I would put images of black men as faithful, as honest. I would put them as hardworking. I would definitely put more images of like black fatherhood and promote that, because I think they've taken away the images of black men as family men, and they've done that on purpose. And one thing I don't think people understand is like we're really in this together. Like how I make you is with another black man. How you create me is with another black woman. So anything that they do to black men is also a personal attack to the black woman, you know? And so it hurts to see black men portrayed in lights like that, especially when I have conversations with women, you know, in my webinars, and I say, well, what's going on? Tell me about your dating situation. And they're like, oh yeah, all these black men, da 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 da. I don't know if I'm gonna find anybody that's faithful. Like they are saying that they want a faithful man, they want an honest man, but they truly don't believe that black men are that way or that they exist. And so I will say the propaganda is real, and they have definitely successfully castrated the black man and reduced him to penis. This is what they've reduced black men to. They have made it seem as though black men, again, don't take care of their children, that they're irresponsible, that they're lazy. And I know for a fact that that's not true. And I also know that when we look at these different systems and how black men have been beaten on the head, I mean, it's always something. And that's another thing. Like, that's why on my platform, I'm always telling women, like, don't get me wrong. I'm all about supporting women and I'm all about empowering you. But women's empowerment does not mean male castration. Women's empowerment does not mean that I hate men. And people have, because of this, feminist movement or whatever, that's what they look at it as. It's almost synonymous. Like, oh, if you support women, then you must hate men. And it's like, that's not what that is. If you support women and you instill values in them, that means they're going to expect more from you. That means they're going to want to see more from you. So regardless of what you see in the media about yourself or what people tell you about you, you know who you are. You can speak life into yourself, and that's what I think is really going to take for black men as well. So I would definitely put some programs up there where you can see people speaking life into each other, black men specifically, shows on Black Brotherhood, accountability, telling your boys, like, I hate it when that happens, but like telling your boys when they're wrong, like, yo, that wasn't cool. Like, you should not have done that to that girl, or there's even men who have, like, they know that their friend sexually assaulted somebody. But because it's their homeboy, it's like, they don't want to say anything. It's almost like a fear.
Like a fear of confrontation in a sense. Because it's like, who am I at the same time to tell what another man does about whatever.
Exactly.
But it's like, I'm glad you brought that up too, because it's like we all have situations and everything where a lot of us, we like to put that meme out there, like when my homeboy's girl cheating on him, it's like you're just constantly on the phone, like, yeah, but it's like if he's cheating on her, it's like, oh, I ain't seen nothing.
Right.
And everything. So it's like I see it as a sense of camaraderie. And I feel like it's always like that sense of just battle of the sexes type situation where we're all trying to outdo each other and instead of trying to work together and try to build as a community. Because if these habits carry on from youth until like, later on, like I'm in my early 20s and everything like that, there's still stuff I need to work on as an individual, relationship wise. Like I know for instance, it's like vulnerability is one thing, like I don't mind speaking and verbally like going over things that I'm vulnerable about, but the whole sense of just being vulnerable I associated with trauma or pain, so it's just a hurdle I need to go through. So it's like, my main love language, it's just like I like communication. I like feeling heard because, growing up I didn't feel like, I was heard. I didn't feel like, my needs were, considered. So it's like when somebody listens, it's like it feels like, everything, So it's just like, it's just stuff like that. But how it all connects is like we need to all just have a conversation. It's just why do we do the things we do? Why do we feel like we need to validate ourselves for our homeboys, Why do we feel like,
fatherlessness?
Yeah, I mean, that could play a role, but let's talk about maybe toxic mothers to a sense. Maybe some women can be toxic too.
That's
very
true.
so, but we don't really speak on it as much, because sometimes they might have bad relationships with like their father or a lot of men in their lives, and then they see that they birth a child, a son, a male. And everything.
Blame him.
Not in a sense blame him, but in a sense using him as an instrument to channel a lot of that negativity. And that's the thing about negative energy that we need to focus. We need to really channel it to be something positive and everything. Instead of trying to, in a sense, humiliate the child, put the child down, be like, oh, you ain't nothing. You're just like your father. Oh, you're whatever. You don't do this like that. That's not helpful.
Well, what about the women who see their son as their man? That disgusts me because I can be honest, like dating guys whose moms are like intentionally rude or try to be disrespectful, like that's annoying.
That
You
happens a
know,
lot. Yeah,
yes,
dang.
and a lot
I
of
heard about
women.
things like that, but I wasn't really too sure. Like, cause I know like some people be like, their moms are really really close and everything. It's something they be doing the polls and stuff. Like, who would you consider like first, like your wife? What comes first, your wife or your mom? I would pick my wife every time because that's the person that is like I'm gonna spend the rest of my life with. Like your mother's gonna be there for a portion of it. Yeah, I know you probably would have never survived without her. But at the same time, it's just like there's a point in life where you got to move on and connect with your other half, and
Right.
that's part of your beingness. So it's like for those mothers that just kind of see their sons as a replacement, yeah, that's kind of disturbing. Kind of giving me I don't
It
want to say
is
misery vibes,
incest vibes. No,
yeah,
I'm
incest
joking.
vibes. Yeah.
But seriously, yeah, there are a lot of women like that, and they coddle their sons so much and make it seem like their sons don't do any wrong. I've seen scenarios where women are like acting like they don't see their sons bringing multiple girls in the house, and he has this girlfriend, and then making it difficult when children get involved. Just toxic things. I remember I dated this guy years ago. He was like my high school sweetheart. And his mother like made it seem like something was wrong with him so that she could get a check for him when he was younger, and that label followed him. And he also couldn't work because of that, because she was receiving some social security benefits, and that's how she would pay her rent every month. So it was like it really held him back in life, and it got to the point where he was like trying to do just anything for money and ended up selling drugs. And I was like, yo, that is not okay. Like, you can't just decide to sell drugs when you could go get a job. It would be different if like he had a criminal record, but he had nothing on his record. So I'm like, don't do that. Like, you're really going to ruin yourself. And so we ended up breaking up very shortly after, but he did end up selling drugs and he did get a charge. And then once you get the charge, you are no longer eligible for Social Security benefits. So I blame his mom for that wholeheartedly, because the man is young, and it's just like he went his whole life not getting his needs met. Mom didn't help him with anything, even receiving that check that he was getting. And so it's like, why are you allowing him to be put in that position where he feels like my back is against the wall, I have nothing, and now I got to get it by any means?
It's really sad because it's not just like mothers with sons, it's fathers with their daughters and everything. It's so crazy how our parents pretty much influence how we interact with others and move on in the world, in a sense. And it's just like, it's, yeah, they're first teachers and everything, and that's just like, because you really have no control on what mental state your parents are in. And that's one of my main things. Like, I always go to spiritual guys that's like, hey, how's my life gonna be like, like my married life, like me and my wife, are we good and everything? Do we depend on each other? We love each other, everything. Any toxicity? I always ask, like, what about my children? Do I have a good relationship with my children? I worry about these things all the time because, you grow up in a household where things fall apart so much due to selfishness and due to just people not putting the family first and everything, because they had some things that they just didn't, get a hold of in their younger lives, or any traumas they didn't get past it. That's why we really need to really, really push counseling for real before even starting a family or nothing. Because all is you're doing is like you're ruining the kid's life. And now it goes on for generational curses of narcissism, of selfishness, even drug abuse. It goes because everyone tries to find some way to cope with all that trauma and that, that negativity. And so I feel like, it's up in the Black community. If we can be able to push some way to get more Black therapists out there, more, just more, to push, going to therapy more instead of just, we always talk about mental health, but we never talk about just the right therapist to go to.
Right.
I feel like we really, really need to just, start to really have a conversation on just how often we as people, even if you're okay, just go to counseling. Maybe like once or twice a month, maybe 3 times a month. Whatever works to really get your problems to the side to try to build it more constructively, and like once we actually get that set up, maybe that'll be the first step to actually healing the Black family. Because it's just like, we really need to get past this. If we really want to see a future for our children where it's just like, where men aren't hating women and women aren't hating men, or taking pride in each other, humiliating each other, trying to harm each other, abuse each other. That's not good, going
No, and
forward.
it's
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 not.
sick, and it's, to be honest, it's self-destructive. I don't think people really realize that, but I've been to therapy more than once, and sometimes I go, like, let's say something traumatic happens. I may feel like, okay, let me go talk to somebody about this. I don't want to deal with this on my own, and I admire, what you said and agree what you said about the whole mental health thing, how it's like a buzzword and it's a discussion and people are talking about, oh, well, go get a massage and get your nails done and pamper yourself. And all of that is good, but when you really talk out loud and hear some of the things you've been through, especially through another lens, like, you'd be surprised at what you hear and how things have affected you. And I can even say for myself, it took me a long time to like heal through my first heartbreak. This is why I promote a lot of the things I do on my page, because I'm like, look, my parents did not put me on game. I love them to death, but they didn't teach me about men. They didn't teach me about dating. So let me teach you just how to be more strategic and be wiser. Are you still going to make mistakes as a young man and a young woman? 1,000%. That's how we learn and grow. However, there are some things you can prevent, and one of those is unwanted pregnancies. You can prevent that. You can prevent having a baby before you're married. Maybe the pregnancy was desired and planned, but you wanted to be married first, So all of those things are very important. And another thing I think is important is family planning in the Black community. Like, stop bringing kids into toxic situations. Like, you don't have all your stuff together. Your finances aren't in order. You can barely support yourself, but you feel like, oh, well, God bless me with a child. Or if we do get pregnant, it's ordained by God, like God must have wanted it. And it's like, no, y'all got to remember, we have free will. Yeah. God is not orchestrating all of your decisions. He can orchestrate some things to happen on your behalf and for your betterment, but that doesn't mean that God is like sitting there making sure everything you do, even if you're messing your life up, is working out in your highest good. Like, you need to do better. And you need to really think about your decisions. And that critical thinking and that accountability aspect is another thing I think is missing. People don't want to hold their friends accountable. I've lost friends trying to hold my friends accountable for things. And do I care? No. Did it hurt my feelings? Absolutely. But I would rather tell you about yourself, like, look, that's not okay. Like, you could be, really ruining yourself and have you upset with me, than for me to not say something and have you overdose, or not say something and have you getting pregnant by somebody who doesn't care about you. Because, to be honest, you're setting yourself up for a hard life. These women who promote, like, there's so many women who will encourage a young girl, oh no, have your baby, or they will encourage young people like, oh no, you need to have a baby as soon as you can, and it's nothing wrong with it. I had my son young and I did fine. And it's like, no, you made it through with your son, but you struggled. Y'all need to tell your kids the truth. These women be suffering. I'm telling you, I am a social worker. I know what it looks like out there. And when you're applying for these different programs, understand, especially during the pandemic, there's a lot of people suffering. You're not just going to jump on a list and get placed in a house, or jump on a list and get assistance with your bills or with your baby. Like, this stuff takes time, and these resources are limited. So do everything that you can to take care of yourself and set yourself up for success. Don't allow, like, of course, things happen in life. Everybody has their own path. I know my father, when I was 17, he passed away unexpectedly. My family wasn't prepared for that. But at the end of the day, my parents were married, so there were safeguards in place, right? And so just set yourself up for success. You can't control everything that's going to happen or every potential disaster, but you can plan, and make sure you do have some things in place. So even if things do hit the fan, you're more ready than it just being a complete and total effed up surprise.
Oh yeah, no, I feel that. I feel that a whole lot, man. And especially at the part where you're speaking about like parents thinking that the kid's a blessing. And it's like, in a sense, yeah, the kid is a blessing, but you got to see like, now, maybe like God didn't choose you just to be parents in a sense, but this is also a test for you. Also, this is also a test. The more people put more thought in everything that they're doing when it comes to raising kids, I feel like kids would be like in a different position and everything. And that's one of the things. I feel like well, my folks and everything, there's a whole lot of just like emotional instability and everything, a whole lack of communication. And I feel like those are my biggest strengths growing up from what I've learned, that it's better to be communicative and everything. And people who don't want to be communicative with you, who don't want to tell you what's wrong or whatever, or just let you know what's up, I'm pretty open book with it. You can talk to me about whatever, just be respectful about it.
Right.
And we can clarify things as best you can. Like, don't assume things about whatever. Don't do that, because all it does is just put it to a swing of confusion. And then you're driving people away for no reason. And that's not cool. Some people come in your life as a blessing. Some come as a lesson. And when, it won't be your choice. But when you notice that people are blessings in your life, it's good to keep them close and just try to cherish them for what they are. And I feel like that's one of the saddest things. I feel like, looking back at my life, I feel like I've tried too hard to be a blessing in other people's life whom we're not deserving. And so I feel like that's another thing that comes back to, childhood growing up. When my needs weren't really met, I always try to meet other people's needs. I always try to be available emotionally for people who are not emotionally available for me either. And you get burnt by that a whole lot of times. I feel like you keep learning the same lesson until you don't learn it no more. So it's like, it's not in the sense that I keep people at a distance for say, but I just kind of see how they move beforehand, how they carry themselves, and I just don't force anything. You just let things go naturally. That could be friendships, relationships, whatever in life. You just gotta let things roll organically. When I feel like another problem I have is just that it's hard for me to kind of let things go when it comes to just like things like that, because it's like like I wouldn't do this to you, so but for you to do this to me and just go on with your life, like how,
Right.
basically. And it's just like you could tell me a secret, I'll try to hold it keeps as best as I can, and nobody would know about it and everything. But I always try to safeguard like whatever secrets or whatever whatever. I try to keep it between me, my counselors, whatever. Because like, you talk to people, you say like one thing, it goes and become like seven other things, seven other types of stories to all sorts of people, all sorts of strangers. I'm from Charlotte now. That's basically, that's bougie South, man. Once people get like a sense of like who you are from people who you could probably just be people that you brush shoulders with and everything. And they have this idea that they know you and they don't know you at all and everything.
Right.
And so like, it becomes two versions of you, the person that's like the organic side, the actual authentic you, and then there's the caricature, the part that's just kind of out there that people just kind of add on, right, whatever, this is who he is or whatever. And I feel like you're constantly at competition with this caricature that doesn't necessarily exist. It's just more like just a caricature of you and everything. And so it's just like, it just goes to show, it's just like, it's very, very important, even going into your adult life, to keep your circles very small. It's everything. Nobody can really say anything about me necessarily, whether if it's social media or whatever. They can assume all they want. And I'm going to just keep it there. Assume whatever the hell you want, please. But there's nothing you can really validate, really, without having your own personal biases. And I feel like social media age really kind of swung a whole lot of that in normalcy also, where we just assume that you know somebody just because you liked a couple photos of them and everything, and then you feel like you can speak on them, like, oh yeah, so and so, yeah, she just posted this and everything, I assume, yeah, she's always at parties, she's always doing this. And it's just like, how would you know that for sure? Do you know that person? Did you speak to that person? You may hop on their live every now and then. You might call them up or text them every now and then, but you don't really see this person day to day to really speak on this person. And it's just like, it's just healthy boundaries. I feel like a lot of people don't really focus on. So it's just like, okay, we're getting closer. You feel like you got any more stuff to speak on, or you just like, hey, you got any more time for anything else? Or maybe we can go like another 10 minutes or whatever.
Well, I think I just wanted to comment first on what you said about not really knowing a person. Like, people put out there what they want you to see. Let's just be clear about that. Social media is exactly what it is. You really think that you know these people. And this is why, we follow celebrities and stuff, because it gives us the illusion like, oh, okay, they're doing this, they're doing that. So we feel like we're following a story. And I used to get so confused about like, that Chris Brown and Rihanna scandal. And I'm like, why are people so upset with them about doing things that happen every day? I mean, I'm not condoning domestic violence. I don't know what happened. What I'm saying is, people get beat up all the time. Your mom or your grandma probably got beat up, and you're so angry at this man that you don't even know. And it's like, what is the issue? But then I had to think, like, no, they feel close to Chris Brown. Like, they watched this boy grow up when he was 16. You keep me on and popping.
Yeah, that
like
Chris Brown era was something. Everybody was going to
was
K-Skate with
lit.
it, bro. Like, I swear. But it was just like, yeah.
Yes, like I had some CDs too, so I get it. So it's like, you watch these people grow up, you think you know them, and so when they do something, it's like a shock to your system, But just remember, like, these celebrities are people too, and sometimes the stuff that they put out there is really about harvesting that energy, people's energy going towards something in large amounts. They utilize that for whatever they use it for. And I'm not going to go too deep on, these conspiracies or whatever, but just be mindful. Like, you don't know why people are putting things out there. And so just try not to look at people as if they're superhuman, number one, but also try not to get too caught up in the stories, because some of that stuff don't be for real. Like, it's just not. A lot of things are made up, and they put things out there to, an album's about to be promoted. Maybe they're going to talk about it on the album, so they want to boost sales. Like, there's so many different things that people do. Like that song, Cardi B and Offset, that song, They Do Anything for Clout. That's real. Like, people do anything for clout. So once again, I'm not saying that particular situation is what that was. I'm just making an example of something that, was popular, was in the media, and you just don't know, like, what's real and what's not. So just don't play yourself is all I can say.
Kind of just like how the Megan Thee Stallion and Tory Lanez situation, or they shot her in the. Because it's like,
he shot her.
You think he shot her?
I think he shot her. I really, really do. And let me tell you why. Of course, I don't know Tory Lanez, but he is an a-hole from what I have perceived, number one. And number two,
not meeting him personally.
Right. That's why I say from what I have perceived. And he, like, his attitude towards the situation, like, he's very cocky
nonchalant.
Yeah. And like, even if, I'll be honest with you, if that were anybody else, I just want y'all to put yourself in that person's shoes, right? If that were me, I would be like, yo, that's messed up that girl got shot, but I have no idea who shot her. Like, he wasn't remorseful. Not remorseful, that's the wrong word, because that would insinuate that he did something. But he didn't have
any sense of empathy.
Right. Like, it was no empathy whatsoever. It was sort of like, F her. And I do know that they did have, some romantic history. So I don't know what happened there. But then also,
situationships, man, they go hectic, man.
I cannot. No, they do, though. But that's a story for another day. But then when I've seen Megan Thee Stallion speak on things, like, I know when she came out, she was talking about how she really couldn't get out of her contract, and there was like a scandal with that. And just her transparency and her ability to be like, yo, I didn't want to put anybody on blast, but like, this is what's going on, and I kind of need help with it. And, I got this attorney, and they're working on it. So it's like, she's always been very front and center about her life. She's been very unapologetic about who she is and not really caring how people perceive her. And so honestly, she just does not strike me as a person who would lie about something like that. Just being real. Like, what reason would she have to lie about him, of all people, shooting her? It's not like she hasn't dated, other people in the industry. And in addition to that, as I already mentioned, women value security. That means a lot to them. So if I know who shot me, I'm going to tell you who did it. It's not going to be like, oh, let me just blame this other person. You get what I'm saying? Like, You want justice, my G. So think about if you got shot. Would you blame your freaking ex for it, or would you blame the person who actually shot you? I hope for your sake, your peace of mind, that you would definitely blame the person who did it and not just randomly your ex. So that's just my stance on it.
Oh, yeah, no. I just kind of see it as just like it's kind of 50-50. Like, I don't want to like go over like, 'cause I actually think Megan Thee Stallion is a pretty cool person. Like, I like how I like her personality. We got the same birthday too, and she likes anime. I thought that was pretty cool. So it's like seeing black women kind of put into like the forefront. Like, I feel like it's kind of necessary. You don't really see like that are taller and not really like the kind of body types that people usually try to push over, more petite like and everything like that. It's always variation, and like there's always beauty in everything. So I think Megan Thee Stallion is very, very necessary. And I really kind of hate how people like think that she's a man and she got balls and everything. Like, why is it always black women all the time? People always assume.
I've never heard that.
You never heard that? People always try to push that stigma that she's like a transvestite. I'm like, why are you pushing that? Like, why?
Just hate her. Like, she's so bold. People don't like that.
And they want to break people down so much, man. It's just like, it's just like, come on, man. But with the whole Tory Lane situation, I see it like this. I don't really know. I wasn't there. Who knows? I'm not trying to say people are liars or whatever. I'm just saying I don't know Megan Thee Stallion personally. I don't know what goes on behind the scenes or whatever. If I ain't witnessed it, I can't speak on it. That's just kind of how I see it and everything, because I am from Charlotte. People say things all the time about people and everything and assume. And it's like, the only thing is, I feel like I'm more like in the middle with it, because if I am not there, and if there's like, it's just, she did get shot in the foot and everything. I ain't never got shot in the foot before and everything, but it's just like, that takes a minute to heal, bro. That's going through bones. That's going through cartilage. It's an explosion in your foot, man. It's just like...
She's thriving, by the way. Just so people know, she's dancing. She's happy. I just actually saw like a brief commercial. I saw a commercial today because I was on YouTube listening to like an R&B mix, and her commercial popped up, and it was really dope. And she was talking about how, she's never been an athlete. Like, because of her height, people would be like, oh, you need to play basketball. Oh, you need to play volleyball. Oh, you need to run track. And she said, I tried all three and it just didn't work for me. But then I found my niche. It was music. It was performing. And people try to say that like performing isn't a sport, but she was like, you try to go to these 12-hour rehearsals and then do these performances in front of 50,000 people. And I was like, yo, that's true, because not I, said the cat. So I feel like her, being authentic and in her element, people hate that. I mean, they hate anybody who's unique. It's just like, even Will and Jada's kids, what is it, Jaden and Willow?
Yeah, Jaden and Willow,
they freaking hate them. Like,
and they're just free black kids and everything, They're always trying to like what their sexuality is, how they live their life, all because they grew up weird or whatever.
Cut their
hair. Like, who cares? They're not your damn kids. Like, what? Do you not realize you don't know these people at all, and it bothers you that they live their life however they want to live? But it's like, back on the Tory Lane situation, I don't know. I can't really tell, because it's kind of been a brick since this stuff has gone on. Like, I was working at Papa John, I think, fall 2020 when this first came about. We're already like a full year removed from this situation.
It's still very real to me, and it feels like it just happened yesterday. No, I'm joking. I'm exaggerating. But what I will say, I do believe that he did it. That is my stance on it. I think that he is in fact guilty, and I hope they find that man guilty if he is guilty. But if he's not, it is what it is. But I think that he is. So
personally, I don't root for anybody to go to jail, because it's just whatever.
It's not about going to jail.
It's about getting like retribution. I understand.
Right.
It's about justice.
I
understand.
I mean, nobody wants anybody to go to jail, right? But if they did something wrong, then they are going to have consequences. So it's not like I want this black man to get locked up. I just want him to pay for what he did if he did it.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's one way to look at it, So, and everything. I don't really know, personally. I don't really get deep into stuff like that. She's still alive. Nobody died. She healed back. She's still going to be selling.
So if you got shot in the foot, is that the approach that you would take?
You know what?
Heck
Actually, no. Because, once again, never been shot.
See, and let me tell you something. I've never been shot either, but from what I hear,
it's not.
It burns.
It burns a lot.
Like, the bullet is really hot, and it burns your skin. Plus, you just got pierced, your flesh. So think about those nerves. you're going to feel that. That's going to hurt really bad. And then to get shot in the foot, like, think about when you stumped your toe the last time.
Yeah, that
Like,
wasn't too good. Yeah, I know.
Yo, that
Maybe a bullet
hurt.
to the
So
foot
just
might
simply
hurt.
stumping your toe on like a surface compared to getting shot in the foot. Oh boy, like I would want him to die. I would want him to die. Not him specifically, but whoever shot,
Whoever
the
shot
person
you,
in the foot.
yeah. Oh,
Right,
man.
like that sucks.
Yeah, man. I don't know, man. These situationships, I don't know. Short-term relationships, that's crazy. Because you're really just getting into it with all sorts of people. You don't know what mental background they got and
Yeah.
everything. I don't know what somebody would bring a gun to, like, someone said just to start flaring it out. I don't know who's trying to prove what. But once again, I was not there, so I don't know. I don't really have no stance on it. I'm just saying whatever happens, whether they figured out who did what or whatever, as long as everyone, gets, as long as whatever it gets settled. That's like so we can get past it. Because I feel like some people are really disrespectful with the stuff on both ends, like kind of nonchalant. I know people hated when the baby was actually working with Tori, knowing that the baby and Meg Thee Stallion were actually mad.
Yeah,
Cool.
that's
Which is really
true.
sad. I really like them being cool together and everything. Because it's like when you see just black males just being friends with like other black superstars and black female superstars too, without sex being. Well, I assume there's no sex being involved between them. We don't know for sure.
She didn't have sex with that man. Anyway, so I feel like that's another thing. Like, who gets mad at somebody for hanging out with an individual that really didn't shoot them? I don't see that. Like, it would honestly be crazy, delusional. But
Yeah, I wouldn't
I
want
don't
my
see
friends to be
that.
hanging out with somebody that shot me.
Exactly.
Now that
I
you
don't
think about
even-
it, it's just. But I feel like once again, I feel like it's just that sense that it's just that negative stigmas. It's just like I feel like we and black women in the media being like I don't want to say it's not promiscuous. I'm saying just kind of vindictive or whatever over something like it could be something little. If like we've all been through situations, even as black men, where we had to kind of butt heads or some females who were kind of narcissistic in nature. I'm sure there's females who bump heads with dudes that are narcissistic too. It's kind of a different experience on both ends, but it's all the same in the sense there's always going to be gaslighting, there's always going to be lying.
Well, that word
there's always going to be story.
narcissistic.
They're trying to figure out who in this sense is a narcissist. It's a narcissist in this situation. I feel like that's because if Megan is a narcissist and she's lying on this person or she's
not.
doing whatever she can to like get clout or whatever, then she'd be the bad guy.
Just
but we don't
be
know
real.
her.
Be
Yeah.
real though.
We don't know.
If you look at
Yeah.
both of their personalities, again, like you said, not knowing them personally,
Yeah.
who really looks like the narcissist here?
Once again, looks
No,
are
no, no, no,
deceiving.
no, no, no,
I don't know them
no.
personally.
You don't-
There
no.
are people who I
Well,
never
but-
thought were going to be narcissistic that are entirely narcissistic.
That's not
Looks are
what
nothing.
That's not what
but
I'm
if we
saying.
had to
If
consider
you
behavior,
had to
yeah.
pick behavior-wise, who would you really consider to be a narcissist? Looking at the situation.
I'm trying to be
And
unbiased.
hold on, no. Let's look at we're not talking about who shot who. We're talking about narcissism.
Who's most narcissistic and who isn't? I mean, as a
Hold
rapper,
on a second. Let's look up narcissistic qualities. It says a person who has an excessive interest in or admiration of themselves, thinking that they know. Let me go to here. Narcissistic. And just to put a disclaimer out there, like I said, I am a clinician, so I don't believe in calling people narcissistic because there's a such thing as narcissistic personality disorder.
which is a real
So,
thing.
Very
we see
real.
it a lot, and even in social media, I feel like it kind of like pushes that even more.
Yeah, they just throw the word around. So don't
People-
just be out here calling people a narcissist if they don't have the formal diagnosis. It's not cool.
And-
However,
Okay.
if we were going to say, all
She's
right, listen
really
to this.
reading it off her phone, y'all.
Literally. Okay, narcissistic personality disorder, one of several types of personalities disorders, is a mental condition in which people have an inflated sense of their own importance, a deep need for excessive attention and admiration, troubled relationships, and a lack of empathy for others. Behind this mask of extreme confidence lies a fragile self-esteem that's vulnerable to the slightest criticism. So tell me, between Megan and Tori, who seems like they would have narcissistic personality disorder?
I'll say this again. I don't know them personally.
You don't have, okay, but you do know enough to.
I'm really trying to be
observe.
unbiased about this
Why are
situation.
you're not being biased by saying something about narcissistic personality disorder? You said you want to be unbiased about Who shot who? Because we don't know, right?
We don't know. I wasn't there.
So narcissist. Let's focus on that. Because you brought up the word narcissist, which means you have an idea of who. Okay, so which one?
I mean, it's just like considering.
Which one?
I want to explain.
No.
Because I don't want to make it seem like I'm just jumping on the friggin' we hate Tory train or whatever.
Exactly. No, you don't say no more. That's exactly what it is. He seems like he has those freaking qualities. And that's the only part that I wanted to get at.
No, that's okay.
And who's more likely to shoot a person? A narcissist. So that's all I have to say. Thank you so much, y'all, for...
Okay. Wait, so we're closing in, right?
Yes.
All right, cool. Because actually, I would have really liked to speak more about narcissism, too. Because I feel a lot of our community really like get that mixed up with confidence and everything. I see it even in high school, man. Like
we're gonna have to schedule
for a different time for that.
Yes,
I'm gonna have to write that down. Would that be going for like an hour? Yeah, I could probably make a list of mental illness and we could pretty much take it. But yeah, that's about it for the Mental Threads podcast. I'd like to thank Miss Love Watley.
Thank you. It has truly been a pleasure. I appreciate you for inviting me.
Oh, no. You brought a lot of value to this for sure. Because you are like credentialed. Like, you're a master's with all this stuff? Yeah. We got a master on here, y'all. So it's like, yeah, so it's really, really helpful. Like, when we met at the Men's Achievement Center, 2-some years ago? Like, it's been a brick ago. Like, it's just, I don't know, college life is just so fast now. I can't believe I'm on last semester. I don't know where the hell I'm going after this. Like, I know where I'm going, but I don't know where I'm headed. But it's like, it's always good to get as many people's voices into the whole Mental Threads podcast as I can. I'm just glad that, I found somebody that was very credible with it. So I'd like to thank you again for making time to come out here. I think that's very nice. I feel like we've gotten a whole lot of insight on both ends. And well, that's it for this is the 21st episode? Yeah, it's the 21st episode of the Mental Threads podcast. Thank you. We are out.